In this episode, we speak with Rachel Rosenblatt, Senior Managing Director at FTI Consulting and Head of the Americas Retail and Consumer Products sector within the Strategic Communications segment. Rachel brings more than 20 years of experience in strategic communications, helping major retail and consumer brands navigate crisis situations, manage reputation, and communicate effectively through change, litigation, and transformation. Rachel was recognized as one of the top 25 consumer and retail consultants and leaders of 2025. FTI Consulting is a global expert advisory firm that helps organizations manage risk, navigate crises, and seize opportunity with over 8,300 professionals in more than 30 countries. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the Executive Chairman of Market Insight Media and Managing Partner of Growth Cap. He is the host of Top Consultant, a podcast featuring today's best consultants who advise and provide services to corporations, governments, nonprofits, and other organizations. Executives and key decision makers tune in to Top Consultant to identify the most knowledgeable and experienced consultants for their most important projects.
Rachel, so great to be with you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So you operate in a really interesting category of communications and particularly focused in the consumer and retail sector. You know, it's fairly known that there's like these snafus that can happen with big companies, particularly you find them in these, could be like medical, healthcare, pharma related situations. And we won't get into any specifics, but maybe if you could just help us set the stage and tell us about the range of situations or solutions you help clients with.
We tend to work with companies at some moment that is going to really matter to their business. It's often moments of transition or change. Those can be great. Those can be somewhere in the middle. And those can also be really challenging to a business and to individuals. So we work across that entire spectrum. So what does that mean? It means we could be guiding a company through a merger or an acquisition, which could be a great transformation for their business and has a lot of moving parts, both internally and externally. We could be working with somebody who is in a crisis, who is dealing with litigation. We could be working with somebody who is going through a bankruptcy or a restructuring. So really the full life cycle of the business. And often what happens, and this is something that I'm really proud of, is that we might be engaged to work with a client when they're at one of these moments. And then we build a relationship where we continue our work together from there. So I have some client relationships that have lasted over 20 years because we started working on a piece of litigation and then, oh, we have this other thing going on in our business. Oh, we have this other thing. Can you help us with this? And while not everybody experiences crises every day, businesses are dynamic. They're constantly changing. And while something might happen to a company that an executive has to lead through that might be, once or twice in a career for them, we might be able to say, actually, our firm and our team has done 3 of those this year. And so we can help guide you through those. The other interesting thing about the consumer and the retail space is they also get an outsized amount of attention because it is much more interesting for the media or online sources to grasp onto a brand they know than some company they've never heard of that makes a component or a widget that they just can't even contextualize easily. So you think like, this isn't such a big deal. Because of the nature of the company and the industry, they're going to get more attention for it. And you've got to make sure that story is told right the first time, every time.
And, in the case of, say, a big CPG company, I would think that there is some communication that's necessary internal to the company with the number of employees that they have. It could be they have 50,000 to 200,000 employees. Do you also work on that communication like internally, or is it purely external?
We absolutely do both. Nothing's internal anymore. And what's external is also internal because of the way that we consume news constantly. And the reality is your employees, if you do it right, should be your biggest advocates for telling that story externally. So we do see it as a whole connected ecosystem. We have a team that is solely focused on what we call business transformation because it's those business transformations that are always going to have the internal component where you have to make sure your employees know what's going on. They understand the rationale, they understand their place for it, and they're going to go along with you for the journey.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned something before related to, say, maybe an executive at the company and doing communications work related to a particular person. How often is that the case, I guess, within your body of work? Like, how often are you working with, say, a C-level executive?
All the time. Because of the nature of the work that we do, we're really working with these companies at these moments that matter for the enterprise. So our point of entry can be very different, but it generally is at that senior level. It could be a CEO or a CFO who knows us or we've been recommended to them. We work with chief legal officers all the time, CHROs or a stakeholder who we work with, chief communications officer, investor relations, and also boards, boards of directors, depending on the level of the issue we're working with, may be the ones bringing in a communications advisor or recommending somebody to a management team. We often start our relationship in one part of the organization and then it shifts. The best thing is a happy client who we guide through one issue. I can think of some examples where we work with companies on cybersecurity matters. So this is a great example where some sort of cybersecurity breach, that's not just an operational issue. That's a customer issue, a consumer issue, an employee issue, depending on the nature of your business and the nature of what's been compromised. We're generally brought in either through a law firm or maybe your chief information security officer. And we work with the chief legal officer on that often. So what might happen is we guide somebody through that. Hopefully we do a great job getting them through a challenging time. And then what often happens is we'll get a call from that chief legal officer again and say, FTI, we've got this other thing going on. Is that something you can help us with? More often than not, the answer is going to be yes. So you already know the company, you've got that built up trust relationship, and it just positions us to hit the ground running and already understand the company we're dealing with as we're getting into this new issue or challenge.
And this area that you operate in is a very specific one. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to specialize in this.
Like a lot of things in life, happenstance and luck played a big part. I had been a very happy camp counselor during my college years. I was a sleepaway camp counselor. I pride myself on having areas of increasing responsibility. So hopefully that was already showing my future bosses what I could do. But it was a summer that none of my friends were going back to camp. And I had to look around and say, I guess it's time to get a quote unquote real job. And through some good old fashioned networking, I met somebody at a boutique communications consulting firm. We hit it off. He hired me to be their summer intern. And then I basically never left. I had a great summer, learned a lot, and started my career there. Continued to freelance for them for the better part of my senior year, went back after college, and then have stayed in the industry since then.
Mm-hmm. And so you transitioned to FTI. You've been at FTI for some time. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to go to FTI. Tell us a little bit about maybe the history of the firm and how it's been able to develop its reputation in the market.
So FTI is a global consulting firm. I started a boutique consulting firm. That boutique firm, Westhill Partners, was acquired by a mid-sized global communications firm called Financial Dynamics. And FTI acquired Financial Dynamics in 2006. It is, sort of an unusual story of somebody in this day and age staying with a job for so long. But the reality is every time I might have otherwise had the desire to get out there and look and see what else there was, my job changed. Either the firm changed or things internally just changed so dramatically, or I had a new opportunity to take on that it never got stale, it never got boring. So I've been able to stay at the same firm. And a little bit about the history of FTI, there was no communications capability before our firm was acquired in 2006. So with one signature, the stroke of a pen, an entire new division came into the company. And we also brought FTI that global reach that they wanted. And of course, the business has filled in all of our various capacities. So, I think with FTI, we really started operating in a silo as strategic communications. And now we're operating as one company in many, many different ways, which is so exciting. And, it feels like every few years there's sort of something new, a new capability, a new team, a new bunch of people that join the FTI family that just gives us more opportunities to collaborate internally. So while it is one company for a long time, it probably could have been 5 for the amount of change we've had just to continue to evolve and hopefully lead the market.
And you're a leader within the firm. And not only have you worked in predecessor firms, but you've had to probably adjust your role. And think about how to reprioritize, how you spend your time. What does being a leader mean to you? How do you enact being a good leader?
There's so much to that. And I suppose you'd have to ask my team if I'm a good leader, but I do try very hard. And what I think about is how much people invested in me when I was early in my career. And that's what I do for people. We are really a meritocracy, and that's the environment that I want to build in my teams, where we teach, we spend a lot of time teaching and training. And when somebody demonstrates that they can do something, they have the hunger, they have the enthusiasm, great, it's yours. So that's very much what I try to do. And I'm a real rising tide lifts all boats person. We work on things together. That is the recipe for our success. And I learned in my career that while it might be tempting at some point to really sort of feel like you're the center of things and hold all the knowledge, you actually never want to put yourself in a position where you're a single point of failure. Life happens. I had a skiing accident once. You never expect that. I was unexpectedly sidelined for quite some time. And my teams were able to step in, and my company and my bosses were incredibly supportive of me taking the time I needed to rest and heal and not come back to work until I was ready to do that. So I got so much from that that I really want to make sure that people are empowered, they have leadership opportunities, but nobody should ever be that single point of failure because we all either planned or unplanned type off. Life happens, and we need to be able to do that. So I think it's working, and I have a really great team. I have people on my team who have been with me since they were our summer interns. And so I'm really proud of that and just love investing in people's career development.
hmm Now, from the perspective of a corporate decision maker, when they're looking at consulting firms and trying to decide who should we spend time with to figure out if we should hire them, I mean, they have a choice, right? They can choose FTI or they could choose one of your competitors. What do you
Mhm.
think it is that makes FTI stand out? And maybe we can make it particular to the area of strategic communications.
Sure. I think there's a few key things. You want to work with the smartest people. And one of the things that has kept me at FTI for so long is just the quality and the intelligence of my colleagues. And I love that I never feel like I'm going to be the smartest person in the room because there's always going to be another colleague who knows more, who's done something different in a different area than I have. So we complement each other, we bring that together. And so I think that's number one. If that's 1A, 1B is, does it seem like they like each other? Does it seem like they've worked together before? And we do. I think we have that in spades. And I'm not the only person who's been at FTI for so long. And even with my newer colleagues, you can really tell that we like each other. We've worked together. And I think that goes a long way. So that's number one. Number two is, I think we sort of hear and read a lot about teaming, but I would ask anybody who you're talking to about how do you do that structurally? Because in strategic communications, we're one P&L across the Americas, which sounds very technical, but it has a very practical application and benefit for our clients. Because what it means is that, let's say I'm working on a client with sort of a very specific matter, but something comes up and I think, gee, it would really benefit, maybe I'm working on a corporate announcement. But now there's really very little division between the corporate world and the Washington, D.C. and policy world. Maybe I say, I would really love to pick a colleague's brain on how is this going to resonate on the Hill. Well, guess what? I can just pull that person in and they can give me an hour of their time. They can give me more. My client doesn't need another contract to do that. They get the benefit because of our P&L structure. So that's technical, but has a really incredible impact on the way we can work together and collaborate. And the third part is where I would challenge this idea of just leaving it to strategic communications, because I think the benefit that we are on a consulting platform can also be incredibly helpful. Because we have these broader capabilities, we can work together in ways that others can't. And in fact, we have some new colleagues who, I think about a colleague who's now leading mergers and acquisitions for FTI globally. And if you ask him part, why did he come to FTI? He said, well, communications, he said, at my old firm, with communications, we would have somebody who had been an English major to write the press release. At FTI, we really have people who know what they're doing and can do it so well. So not every client's going to need that, but I think that can also be a strong strategic differentiator for us.
Now, when you think about the number of companies out there that, employ these services, maybe external consulting firms. Is there something you think these companies frequently miss that they could be doing strategically that they're not? And it could be proactive communications, or it could be maybe like something happened, it leaked into the news and they didn't handle it the way they should have. But is there something that you see over and over again that companies miss?
There's no one size fits all, but I think the important thing is to be looking around corners. And I think companies, especially right now, I mean, this exact moment, this tariff war we're in, things are moving so quickly. And it's so easy to make an unforced error where you say something that like feels okay right now, but you're not thinking about all the stakeholders. So I'm talking to my clients. This isn't just a media request. How is this going to be perceived amongst investors? How is this going to be perceived amongst legislators and regulators? So, look, a lot of companies are very sophisticated with this, but I think having that outside perspective on risk mitigation and what else is out there is incredibly important and something that we can do. The other thing that has changed dramatically is the media landscape has changed so much. We're long past the days where a press release is going to tell your story, but the area is evolving so much. And I think particularly in today's political and regulatory environment, we're looking at things very differently for clients and really thinking about who are our actual audiences here and what are the right channels to get to them, and then building a strategy from there. So it's that strategic versus tactical approach that's really critical. And then the last thing is you used to be able to do certain things in a business vacuum. This is Wall Street. This is just investors. This is merger and acquisition. Okay, we sort of know the playbook. Guess what? Washington cares a lot more. I mean, there's so many other things. And what's going to work in Washington? Well, are you a global company? What is the EU going to think about this? And how do you do that? So I think having that integrated perspective, both in terms of these stakeholder audiences, getting out of just sort of one discrete bubble, but also that global perspective. Maybe it's table stakes now, but not everybody is quite there yet.
Excellent. Okay, last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Sure, I would be happy to. When I started working, I was planted outside of the office of one of the partners of my first firm, Lou Colaswano. Just had dinner with him the other night, and he became so much more than a boss, really sort of a mentor, a friend, family, truly, after we've known each other for so long. And he spent his career in journalism, rising to be the editor-in-chief of the New York Post and the New York Daily News. And I think a huge part of why I've gotten to where I am today is because I just talked to him all day long for so many years and just absorbed so much. He is still part of our business. He's a senior advisor at FTI Strategic Communications and is somebody who will be in my life forever.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Volunteering has always been an important part of my life. And for many years, I was a mentor for high school students. And then I had my own child and I had to take a little break because I actually had to mentor and raise my own child. But, then I thought, well, she's only in second grade, but, I had the sort of time and bandwidth to think about what else can I do and how can I make an impact again. So about a year and a half ago, I joined an organization with a local hospital, Lenox Hill Hospital, which is part of the Northwell Network. I joined their auxiliary, which does fundraising, but really does a lot of hands-on things to help the hospital improve. So we raise money, we make appropriations, and it's about recognizing employees. It's about how can we have direct impact on the nurses, the patient care experience, and being very active in that. And you might not be surprised to hear that in the last year, I've been chairing the communications committee. And that's been great, sort of really bringing that business knowledge to the auxiliary to really start telling our story more effectively. So it's something that I'm just getting started with. Although my mother's been a member for many decades, so it's just an opportunity to also spend more time with her and collaborate. So it's been a real joy to be a part of for the last almost 2 years.
Wonderful. And we'll include a link in the show notes. Rachel, want to thank you again. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.